Okay, this is the worst music you're going to hear for the next hour. Because we're going to start playing some really great jazz music. We do this every year with our three kings of jazz. They are back. This is a unit that we will never break up if we can possibly avoid it. And I think the music that they've chosen this year is especially nourishing. It's rich and reassuring. And you need that right now. I'm also just struck, as I usually am, by the fact that, we're going to talk about 11 cuts of really terrific jazz music. I didn't really add it all up. I would say 6 of them have a substantial connection to Connecticut, where we do this show. Because Connecticut really has this incredible jazz country thing that people don't know about. Anyway, all of that is to come. Get ready to enjoy some beautiful jazz right after this.
I remember springtime. I remember when it rained. I remember nighttime, the happiness and pain. I remember you, but I can't remember love.
Okay, this is our show that we do every year on the best jazz of the year. That isn't really one of the songs. I just opened with it because it's actually the jazz tune that probably more people heard for the first time this year than anything I can think of anyway. And the reason is it was actually a sort of a live person singing in a bar scene in Queen's Gambit, the very heavily watched Netflix show. It's actually a young artist named Hauss, who's just getting her career going. And it sounds like it's like a Birkin Van Heusen tune. It turns out she I think she's German, and she and a couple of other German musicians wrote that song. It's not a Birkin Van Heusen oldie. All right, so that'll be the last of my musical opinions for the entire day. You'll be glad to know, because in fact, we've got our usual crew. I think we're under-branded. They need some kind of name. I don't know if we've ever come up with that. Joining us now is Jen Allen, a pianist, composer, arranger, and educator. Her new album is Sifting Grace. Noah Baerman is a pianist, composer, and educator. His new album is Love Right. And Gene Seymour is, first of all, the mayor of the Colin McEnroe Show's annual jazz program. Maybe his most lordly title, anyway, and a film, television, and music critic. But Gene is sort of the guy who persuaded us to start doing this a long, long time ago. And boy, were we lucky that we listened to him. So welcome back, everybody. Merry holidays and all that kind of stuff. And it's, usually it's just weird because a lot of times we can't see Gene because he's somewhere else. But Noah and Jen, I'm so used to seeing you guys, and it's just very strange.
Yes. It's really weird.
You can confirm that it's strange?
Yes.
We are remote within remote, yes.
Yeah. We have unanimity about strangeness.
Yes.
So maybe it may not be the only unanimity we have in this call. Yes. We'll see.
Yes.
Yeah. So, before we start in, I just wanted to say that, and I want to kind of get you guys to comment on this. It could be my imagination, Noah, but I feel like, listening to the 9 cuts that we hope to get to today, plus cuts from your album and from Jen's album, I feel like maybe it's a little bit more aimed at rattled nerves, intentionally or subconsciously. There's not quite as much stuff that's just like really sort of cranked up and no big Kamasi Washington, thing that's really sort of throwing a lot of sound at you.
No, as I said in my blog, geneseymour.com, by the way, this didn't seem the year to kind of, set off car alarms or change the universe or, wake the neighbors or whatever. It just didn't seem the year for that. And even within those boundaries, there was a lot of good music to be found still.
Yes.
Even using those self-imposed or arbitrary limits.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've been knocked out by the choices. I'm not going to delay because there's a lot for us to get through. So we're going to begin with one of Jen's choices. It's Dan Liparini, a Hartford guy, a Hart School Jackie McLean product here. Is anything else you want us to think about, or we should say the album is called Tessellations. Anything you want us to think about, Jen, as we get ready to listen to this?
I first want to say I'm not picking this because I'm on it, but I am on it, and
Yes.
I pick it because I love Dan's playing, and I love his compositions, and I think that they just have a deepness to them for that a lot more people need to hear, and so I hope a lot more people will hear him now that he's getting out there. So.
Yeah, I was just knocked out by his stuff. By the way, I'm on Noah's album, so everybody's got a conflict of interest, you know. All right, so here's Dan Liparini. The song is Spiral. So I wish we could play it out a little bit longer into some of the solos, but we got so much material to cover. So Noah, as you listen to this, and for all I know, you know Dan Liparini too. This is a small state. I wouldn't be surprised to go through his record collection and find a lot of Pat Metheny records. But what's your overall impression?
Well, I do in fact know Dan Liparini, so I won't claim complete detachment. But yeah, he's a really fine young composer and guitarist, and I don't want to lay this all on him. This is a theme that will come back with a couple of these selections, but it's always reassuring for a middle-aged musician like myself to hear the young folks really bringing it like that. And yeah, he's got a lot of that modern vocabulary that you're referring to.
Yes, and well, I like the title cut, Tessellations, even more, I think, than I like this, too. Gene, any particular reactions from yourself?
No, I mean, I come here every year to get educated or re-educated with my old home state's musical heritage, and I'm always pleased to find these incredible new discoveries of people of whom I have never heard or heard before, and to see that all the stuff that I grew up with and the kind of things I was surrounded by when I grew up is still being sustained. It's great to hear. And yeah, I hear not just Pat Metheny, but also the proud old traditions of Wes Montgomery and all the others who, again, I listened to with my father and his friends and their friends, most of what I was growing up with back in Hartford. So yeah, it's gratifying.
I mean, Connecticut is we're gonna come back to this again and again, but Connecticut is such an incredible jazz state. I mean, this tiny little state which has this kind of uptight reputation, and then you find out who studied here, who played here. It's really so many of the people on today's show.
They should officially know that too.
Yeah, there's a branding. First of all, we're underbranded. You guys need a name. You need to be the three somethings. I don't know what. And Connecticut's underbranded when it comes to jazz. So Noah, let's make a transition here, and maybe since you said that other thing, we should decide when's the demarcation point with old folks and non-old folks, because Wayne Escoffery is coming up here. I think he's 45. So which side of your continental divide does he fall on?
I mean, I went to high school with Wayne, and so I think if I'm middle-aged, he officially is as well.
Okay.
That's how I'm lining up around it.
Okay. Yeah, I think everybody has your own perspective is inevitably, like when I talk about somebody old, they have to be like 70 or 75. I used to think people
that's fair.
Were 50 who were 50 were kind of old. All right. So this is called A.K. Reggie. It's from The Humble Warrior. We should say that he did grow up. Actually, he was born in London, grew up in Connecticut. Once again, went through that Hart McLean pipeline.
Yeah, it was a bit of a I don't want to say a coin toss, but his record and that of his college roommate, Jimmy Green, both came out close to each other this spring, and it was tough to omit one of them from the list. But
I have to say, usually it's the mayor, Gene Seymour, who has a lot of trouble getting down to three. In fact, it's always Gene who has trouble getting down to three choices.
Yes, it is.
But but I would say Noah Noah may, I mean, in terms of like stalling to the last minute and just having trouble pulling the trigger on 3 of them, Noah may have given you a run for your money. You were
There's an extent to which I was just being transparent about my suffering in a way that I am not usually.
Yeah, well, that's very 2020. All right, let's, without further ado, hear AKA Reggie. Okay, so Noah. Well, actually, yeah. Let's have the other panelists react first. Jen, go ahead. Tell me what you're hearing here. I don't know if you spent much time with the album itself.
Yeah, I think it's a great album. I love Wayne's playing. He's very controlled and measured in his way of going about things, and he has such a depth of experience that comes out, and you can just hear the quality in even that tiny little bit of music. I love Wayne. I went to school with Wayne, and so I have a fondness for his playing and the musicians that he chooses to play with. So it's a great album.
So, what about you, Mr. Mayor?
Well, this will come up again in another context, but I become, the older I get, the more attuned I become, so to speak, to tone. And with Wayne's playing, and I've especially noticed this with his recent stuff like this, the way he handles what we call bottom, the bottom part, is just, and I hate to use the word exquisite because I'm not sure it fits, but it really does apply to this particular track. I really think that he's got whatever is meant by bottom. He's really refined it to an extent that so many players, should achieve at this point in their lives and sometimes just miss. So,
Noah, another theme that we'll be returning to multiple times. I mean, it's not that unusual for a bunch of really good jazz albums to have profound spiritual or existential questions embedded in them. Who are we? Why are we here? What is this thing called life? What are we doing here? I think it's stronger this year, and I noticed in Wayne Escoffery's there's a kind of almost a little simulated mass segment. I was actually especially knocked out by the cut called Benedictus, but there's some religious themes flowing through this one. I don't know how much more you can say about that.
Yeah, it's actually on one of those cuts in that his son sings one of these old pieces, which is another layer of beauty on top of the whole thing. I think it is interesting. I'm going to maybe... Well, it's interesting to me that a lot of the stuff that maybe reflects the tenor of 2020 was recorded previously. It's not like all these albums that came out in the spring were conceived in the first week of the pandemic and were out a couple weeks later. So right. To me, it is very relevant and of this time. And at the same time, Wayne's sense of searching and pursuit is inherent to his essence as a musician and has been for a couple decades now.
All right, so we're just going to keep this train rolling so we don't fall behind. So let's go to Gene Seymour. We're going to talk about a bona fide supergroup here, and they've gotten a fair amount of publicity already just because of the names and the concept. So, Gene, set up this cut from Artemis. Tell people who Artemis might be.
Artemis is this, as you say, supergroup, and that's a term that's kind of a red flag to people because the conventional wisdom is supergroups never work, too much ego, too much this. But this is very different. It's also all women, and all these women in particular, have groups of their own and reputations of their own, and they've managed to meld their sensibilities together to put out this. I think this is their first album. They've been on the road for some time now, performing at festivals and concerts throughout the world. Rini Rosnes is the pianist, and she's sort of the quarterback of this group. But briefly, you've got Anat Cohen on saxophone. You've got Ingrid Jensen on trumpet, Melissa Aldana on tenor sax, Noriko Ueda on bass, Allison Miller, who I love, on drums, and you have a special guest star in Cecile McLaurin-Salvant, who sings on some of the tracks. You and I have had many experiences with her over the years. What Rini did for this one that I especially liked was to do a kind of a slow tempo, slow hand version of a familiar song by Lee Morgan, the Sidewinder, which is very familiar to jazz fans. And by kind of slowing it down, she finds a new kind of space for it to exist. And it's really, really, I thought it was one of the hippest things I heard all year.
Yeah, we're going to play this now. Sidewinder it's kind of a warhorse, or a workhorse,
Yep.
or something in the world of jazz. But as you're going to hear, if you know the tune at all, the chords these musicians are playing in are not. I'm sure one of our two learned pianists here can explain it after the cut, but they're not the chords we typically think of with this particular song. So here's Artemis doing Sidewinder. All right, so Jen, tell me what it is I'm trying to say here. But I mean, hearing the layering and the chords that are expressed here, I think I'm a little bit more familiar with just hearing the Lee Morgan melody, and I don't imagine those chords that are being played. What are they doing there?
It's called an arrangement and a reharmonization of the chords. Mm-hmm. So I don't know who did it. Maybe Rini did it or not.
It was Rini. Yeah, it was Rini.
Sounds like a pianist, honestly, just because of the type of chords they're using. And I mean, they have a large band, so they want to, or she wants to, I'm assuming, use all the different voices and use them in the most, the best way that'll make all the instruments sound great. And she does a great job doing that. She understands all that stuff so deeply, and you can just hear the way that comes through in the writing. And I think that's what we're all reacting to. It's just a great arrangement of that. So.
Yeah. So, and you can hear, I mean, some of the meat of the song is playing under us right now with all these terrific musicians soloing over that particular line. Noah, any particular reactions of your own?
Well, first thing is that I've been a fan of Rini since I was in my early undergraduate years, and I think this is a lovely record. It's kind of cool that they throw this standard on there. I mean, that's at the risk of patronizing towards the jazz aficionados listening to this. Most of this album is original material, but it's they follow the age-old tradition of throwing in some known piece of material so that listeners can use that as a point of reference for understanding their approach. I think every 201 every musician on this album delivers.
I would say also that on whatever it is that we call this show every year, at least three, besides Cecile McClure and Salvan, at least three, Melissa Aldana and Anna Kohn and Rini Rosnes, they've all been featured. They've all been chosen by you guys for special attention by one or the other of you. And that actually allows us to make a nice through line leap to the next cut, which is Joel Ross. This is a choice of Jen's. I would just point out that last year Noah picked Visions by Melissa Aldana, and Joel Ross played prominently on that. He was sort of considered last year a real kind of breakout star of jazz in 2019, this Vibes player. So, Jen, anything you want us to listen for before we... Actually, I think what we're going to do is just talk about it and then play it out into the break. So, Jen, you go first. Just tell us what you want us to listen for.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is a sound that is very prevalent in jazz. I think he has the types of music he's writing, and I mean jazz today. I'm sorry, I should be a little bit more clear. I think there's, as a musician, and as I talk to other musicians, there's these different types of jazz sounds, and this one in particular, I think reflects a lot of where jazz is headed in the future. It has a very modern kind of sound. I like the makeup of the band, the approach to the solos. It's just a very, I wouldn't say it's like a straight ahead, like traditional kind of band. Like this is the stuff that's moving the art form in new directions. It's not just one direction, it's many directions, but this is definitely a prominent one. And I just felt like it was a good reflection of this past year. And I really love the playing on it.
Actually, I think what we should do in the interest of time is just play the song, get into the break. When we come out, yes, there are albums by two of our jazz mavens that we're going to be talking about, as well as some really, really interesting other choices. So stay with us. But yeah, let's just go out with Joel Ross. I believe the song is More ? From Who Are You ? All right, so first of all, this is our yearly jazz show. If you're just tuning in, we always have our the same three wise jazz mavens to talk about jazz, the pianists and educators and composers Jen Allen and Noah Baerman, and critic Gene Seymour. And this year, the first two people I mentioned, they have notable albums out. That's Jen Allen's. I think the cut is called Kurinji. I hope I'm saying that right. It's the closing track from Sifting Grace. One thing I'm fairly sure of, Gene, is that I would be a big Jen Allen fan if I'd never met her. You just like if somebody just started playing this music to me, I'd go. I wouldn't think, oh yeah, I used to go to church with her. I'd go, wow, who is that? That's great. And this album in particular, I'm just kind of knocked out by. So Noah, you go ahead, Gene.
I feel the same way. I've always kind of liked her. I have to choose my words here. Attack, I guess. And I think it's always very surprising to me to see how really she's able to blend that attack and this year I've been very sensitive with how well people play with others. Mm-hmm. Like in the previous albums we talked about, just the kind of communication that goes on between. Maybe I'm sensitive to that because of the isolation we're under, relatively speaking. But I'm really, really sensitive to the kind of communication that goes on, and that's what I'm responding to here as much as anything else. Along, of course, we're playing.
So Noah, let's continue to talk about Jen like she's not here. So
she owes me $10. No, she doesn't really. But
let's just say.
Yeah. I've been looking forward to this album for some time, and it lives up to those expectations. I think my only complaint about it, I think about driving around, listening to it in my car in the early days of the pandemic, like freaking out trying to go get groceries, and it's just really a shame that like so many things that came out, especially early in the pandemic, as this album did, when people's attention spans were so blitzed and all of the CD release gigs that were supposed to happen got shelved. It deserved more uninterrupted attention than circumstances allowed it to get.
Very kind of you. I don't know if my music deserved it, but the musicians on that album gave so much, and I thought they did such an amazing job. And we all felt run over when the pandemic hit. It was just like we didn't know what was happening, and so there were a lot of people's albums. I had tours and stuff that was going to happen. Everything fell apart, but I feel blessed because there's a lot of people whose full-on work was completely decimated by that. So yeah, thank you, but yeah.
Jen, I had to pay Noah $10 to be able to sing on his album, so that sum of money is clearly important to him. And if I'd known, if I thought there was a chance, I would have offered you $10 too. So no, I just want to say, well, Jen, let me just ask you a quick question, which is, I don't know what I'm talking about here as usual, but I feel as though what I hear on this album too is, as an artist gets, I'm not going to say ages, I'm going to say gets further along in her career. There's a way in which I think you can really kind of imagine the whole way you want a song to sound. And to me, I felt like I thought I was sensing that wow, there's just kind of a comprehensive intelligence that runs through this song. It isn't, obviously it's a lot of really talented musicians and they're soloing and stuff like that, but I felt like you had a real strong notion of what the totality of each song was going to be.
I mean, I it's not always at the beginning, just like anybody who's writing a book or anything, creating anything. I have a vision for what might happen, and then it changes as it goes along, and then hopefully I can get it to some kind of completion and make it make sense. So I appreciate that. I do feel really good about the songs on this album, that they were more complete thoughts. So
yeah, that's what it felt very much like. Yeah, complete thoughts, exactly. All right, well, let's jump over to the other one, the Noah Baerman and Friends. The album is Love Right. We're going to play Dream Without Me, and then we'll talk about it, I think, when we come back. So let's talk about Noah, like he's not here. So Gene Seymour, give me your immediate reactions here.
Well, so he's not here. I feel safe in saying that. Come on, no, I'm not kidding. No, really, I think that as I think I said the last time this occasion came up, that one of the things that makes Noah both fit in well and be very much of a paradigm of his generation of jazz musicians is that he is not only bringing new ideas to his playing, but also is suggesting new ways of presenting it. And I think that in the ways that he is, framing the music, I think is every bit as innovative, perhaps even more so than the actual music that's there. I mean, of course, the music is, of course, innovative in its own way. But I think what makes Noah, important, not just where he is, but also for the music itself, is that he is looking for ways to reshape and reframe the music, and which is what it needs to do. I always say, adapt or die, and then people like him make sure that it keeps adapting and not dying.
Yes. So Jen, how about you? Obviously, you guys are friends and colleagues. It must be interesting just to hear what Noah comes up with.
I am always inspired by Noah. Not only his great musicianship, which is such high level, like I always get a little intimidated when we play together because I'm like, is he going to hear all the crap that I'm doing? Like anytime you're around another artist friend, you kind of get a little like, oh no, they're going to see everything that's bad. But, he always sees the good. And that's the one thing about Noah that I really, there's a zillion things I admire about him, but like he lifts people up, and his vision for his music is more than the music. He wants to lift other people up. He wants to celebrate people. He wants to memorialize people. He wants to honor people, and he wants to bring some good into this world. And there's not a lot of people who do it as well as he does. So I'm really, I just love that he's my friend and a colleague, and that this album exists because it's pretty moving. So,
Noah, do you have anything to say for yourself?
Hey guys, I just got back. What'd I miss? No, thank you. There's Jen and Colin are two among the 100 people literally joining me on this tribute to my friend Claire Randall. And Wayne Escoffery, you heard soloing on that tune. So, I'm just grateful to have had the opportunity to share this music, and I'm grateful for your kind words.
Yeah, no, I also, I'm getting a lot of reviews for my vocal performance. A lot of the critics are really, kind of.
What kind of reviews, Colin?
Picking out my work. Reviews that I've made up in my head that I imagine when I'm falling asleep, those kinds of reviews. All right, we have to transition here. This, there's always one choice that fascinates me because it's just so completely outside most of the typical categories, and like 90% of the time it's a Jen Allen pick. That is certainly the true case this time. They're called Endless Field. It's a guitarist and a bassist. I would simply like to point out that their album, Alive in the Wilderness, was recorded in the summer of 2020 in the Utah wilderness using a solar...
2019.
2019, sorry. Using a solar battery-powered mobile recording studio. So that's if that isn't a Jen Allen pick, I'd like to know what is. But I've really been digging in deep with this album, Jen. Explain why you gravitated towards it first.
Well, a couple of reasons. I know Ike very well, and I've played with Jesse a couple of times, but that isn't the reason. I never pick music because I know people. It helps me to understand it maybe a little bit better. But this album actually has videos for each of the songs. So if you go on YouTube, you can find videos that go with it. That was recorded live outside. And I love nature. So that, number one, hits me right in the heart. And then number two, the playing is it's kind of like this mix of folk and jazz and all the different things that Ike and Jesse know how to do so well. And if anybody ever knows the Jazz Vespers at St. Peter's in New York City, Ike is the music director there, and so he does a lot of great music. So you can always check out his music there, and that's how I met him, through that. But anyway.
Right. Yeah, let's play a little of this. It's also Mr. McPant's favorite cut that we're doing on the show today. You got to listen to this whole thing, though. Dust was the one that really knocked me out. This one's called The Well. Sorry to fade so fast, but we gotta go. We gotta catch up here. We're behind. So yeah, I just want to say this whole album, I started calling it prog folk at a certain point. It's sort of like prog rock, but it's folk. It sounds here like, in percussion-wise and guitar-wise, it sounds like maybe some Indian music is creeping in here. You start to hear sounds of the raga or something. But Gene, I'm guessing this might have been one that came out of left field for you. Did you already know about Endless Field?
I did not know about this, but the very trend you're talking about is something that is very extant in jazz right now. The influence of Near East, Far East rhythms and the kind of incantatory nature of it, which I definitely heard here. It's all looking forward, man. And I've been at a time when people kept saying that jazz was only looking back, and I keep telling people, no, it's not. This is why. Pay attention. You know,
this whole album is so freaking cool. Noah, a quick observation. I need to keep us on schedule, but
so Ike actually played on the title track of my Love Right album, played bass, and he's a great example, as we're hearing a lot on the show, of people who are really, really schooled in playing straight ahead jazz at a high level, but then their own creative projects take on a vision that is not self-conscious about articulating that.
all right, so as we head towards the end of this particular segment, you know, every year we lose people in the world of jazz. This year, Candido Camaro, the saxophonist Jimmy Heath and Lee Konitz, the singers Annie Ross and Freddie Cole, bassist Gary Peacock and Henry Grimes, the pianist McCoy Tyner, drummer Tony Allen, trumpeter Wallace Roney. That doesn't even include Andy Gonzalez, Ellis Marsalis, and Jimmy Cobb. But we're going to focus on one of Gene's choices. It's Jimmy Heath, who died at the age of 93. So a man who's been around for a while playing saxophone. We're going to actually talk up to this and then play it into the break. So first of all, Gene, what do you want to say about this?
Well, a couple of things, and I'll try to be brief. He actually recorded this like last fall, a year ago this fall, when he was like turning 93. It was weeks for his 93rd birthday. And then he was just polishing up and trying to refine these tracks up until the moment he died earlier this year. And what's amazing to me, and what's always been amazing about me, is that when I think of Jimmy Heath, I've always thought of resilience. I've always thought of somebody who, no matter what, I mean, I watched him conduct a big orchestra when he was 90 years old, and he looked like the most vital guy on stage. I mean, he was playing with as much depth, and we talked about tone. The tonal qualities were just amazing. You just don't expect here. Not a break, not a lapse, nothing. And I think in the track you're going to hear, you're going to just hear, you're going to think to yourself, so this is what 93 sounds like. And you're going to think, wow, I can't wait to get there. Because
you're also going to hear a lot of Wynton Marsalis. He's really prominently featured on
Wynton
this track.
Marsalis, who always seems to play even better when he's on other people's albums, paradoxically, but he really distinguishes himself here, playing the part in a way of one of Heath's old late conferees, Kenny Dorham.
All right, we're going to have to jump right into this, or we're going to run out of time. So this is La Mesha from Love Letter. This is the Jimmy Heath album released this year. listening to Chris Dingman. He is one of Noah Baerman's choices. Before we get into that, I got to thank Kat Pastor. This show is very complicated for the person who's firing off the cuts, and she's done such a great job with all the fades and stuff like that. So she's, well, we're lucky to have her. She's like our rhythm section here, and then our producer or arranger would be Jonathan McPants. He's the guy who pulled this whole show together. So thanks to both of them, and thanks to the panelists. We got one last segment here with Noah Baerman, Gene Seymour, and Jen Allen. So there's like a Connecticut connection to everything, Noah. Chris Dingman, I don't have to tell you since you're at Wesleyan. He was at Wesleyan, right?
He was. So, yeah, this is quite an illustrious year for the class of '02. The drummer on this track, also class of '02, is Tim Keiper, who is part of David Byrne's American Utopia band. Mary Halverson, the great guitarist, came out with a wonderful, and MacArthur Fellow came out with a wonderful Code Girl album this year. And then there's that Lin-Manuel guy, all class of '02 at Wesleyan. So and Chris is delightful. Chris actually also came out with an album of like 5 or 6 hours of solo vibraphone music that is really gorgeous. So I encourage those who enjoyed those few seconds to devote 7 hours of your life to Dingman's music.
So yeah, just some quick reactions from Jen Allen, first of all.
Yeah, Chris is world class in the way he approaches music, in the type of person he is. I love this album. I love his playing Always Do. And so, yeah, I love this. That's all I can say.
And how about you, Mr. Mayor, real quick?
In the interest of time, I'll just say he's very, very good, and he's proven himself to be very good since his first album. Since we have the Jazz Critics NPR poll gave him Best First Album award many years ago. So, yep.
All right, now we're going to switch over from here to the Maria Schneider Orchestra. This is one of Mayor Gene Seymour's picks this year. Before we play this, I would like to introduce my most obscure piece of trivia for today. So Maria Schneider, who's been around for a long time, is from Windham, Minnesota. Also from Windham, Minnesota was Johnny Olson, who was like the announcer on all those game shows. You know, he was like the guy who told you about the prizes to tell the truth and what's my
Come
line.
on down.
Yes, match game, the price is right, all that stuff. So that's my weird piece of obscure trivia. I think what we should do is play some of this cut and then have all three panelists talk about it. We're actually not too screwed for time right now. So this is Data Lords, from Data Lords, the Maria Schneider Orchestra. So before we get in even to the meat of the music, one thing that I can tell you is that, because we're going to give you a whole list online of every song that we played. If you want to build your own playlist or whatever, you can do that. But when you come to this one, you may be going, hey, there's a problem here. My Spotify isn't working. And no, that's because Maria Schneider, I think, is, among other things, a huge advocate for artist copyrights and maybe not all that down with all these free streaming services.
That is correct. And indeed, the concept behind Data Lords gets a lot into the way information is shared and disseminated these days, which also some people just don't even think about the fact that paying money to musicians is actually consequential. But this year, more than ever, even if you don't buy the record, stream it on Spotify and just send them $20 if you like it. It really, in many cases, is consequential, both economically and from the standpoint of morale to keep going.
All right. Or $10, as you know, that's what Noah usually charges for stuff, as we've discovered here on the show today. So, Gene, tell us just very quickly why you made this choice.
Well, first of all, she, as you have alluded to, she may be, at the very least, the most important arranger, composer, band leader of the present day, with an incredible body of work, impressive body of work, from which this is a singular departure, in my opinion, of the it's an odd choice of words, from her previous work, in that there's almost a kind of anger and restlessness to this stuff, as you may have detected from that squib you played. But what I find, even beyond the thematic idea, which of course she's juxtaposing the digital world with the natural world, the latter of which has always been very important to her, and has been a wellspring for her inspiration, for her music, rather. She lets her musicians really go at it on this in ways that I have never heard her do before, because she's all about the orchestrations. She's all about the voicings and the blendings. But even in that one track, you can tell that there's still a core, as unfettered and as wild, as seemingly wild as the soloists get. There's that solid bottom, as a word I used before, that core, that orchestral core that just keeps it propped up. And I think the more I listen to this, the more I thought the last one was a masterwork. This may be even more of a masterwork than the one that came before.
All right, Jen Allen, a quick reaction?
I mean, she is a composer who is unmatched in a lot of ways nowadays. I mean, she writes for her musicians. She's able to do that. She has the ability and has made it kind of her thing, where she is not going to put her music on Spotify, and she's going to hire the best musicians and consistently similar musicians so that she knows who she's writing for. And I think she's kind of every composer's dream, so we all look up to her. It's amazing.
So, okay, so we can now segue into, we were going to make it. We're actually going to get to all the songs. I'm so happy. So the last cut is, first of all, Noah, I feel like, when you first mentioned this, I thought, I just heard so many albums that rely on saxophone and tap dancing. I just feel like the whole concept is played out. Do I really want to hear another one? But then you have surprised me. I hope it's clear that I'm kidding. There aren't any other albums that I know of that are like that. So, Noah, tell us about these two artists.
So DeWitt Fleming Jr. is based in New York. He's the tap dancer and percussionist. And Erica von Kleist, who plays woodwinds as the co-composer, is from... she went to Hall High School in West Hartford, but she lives out now in Whitefish, Montana, and in a way, she's sort of a symbol of what jazz is right now in terms of being industrious and figuring out how to make stuff happen under less obvious circumstances. She lived in New York and worked for many years, and she's doing a lot of really impressive things out there. She's got a nonprofit that brings arts to the region. She's got a new musical that you can rent and stream called Your Musical is Canceled, the musical. And the interplay that she and DeWitt have when they write and play together is really infectious, and it's not at all gimmicky. It's like all of the best things about jazz rhythm and energy augmented and amplified through the tap, which is not just an addition. He's an integral part of the band.
Right. So you were so demure as not to mention her one-woman show, Boobs and Other Stories, with her at the piano and voice. So yes, this is kind of hatched in the jazz cradle of Whitefish, Montana, and it does involve an alumna of the celebrated Hall High School jazz program. So I actually really did fall in love with this album. It's called Intersplosion, live at Dizzy's Club, Saxon Taps by Erica von Kleist and DeWitt Fleming Jr. We're going to go out with that, and thanks to Jen and Noah and Gene the Mayor, and thanks to you for listening.